morning, everybody, and welcome to the first, and based on this awesome attendance, probably not the last, Dialysis at Home, a kidney community event. It's presented by the American Kidney Fund and Home Dialyzers United. And I'm Nilcha Gedney, Executive Director of Home Dialyzers United.
I'm LaVarn Burton, President and CEO of the American Kidney Fund, and I'm also delighted to be here. We're so happy that you joined us to learn about your home dialysis options. Before we kick off the activities, Nilcha and I wanted to take a moment to tell you why we're here, what's in store for you today, and what we hope you gain from attending.
So I had an idea to put on a truly interactive, immersive, and educational experience for people dealing with kidney disease who are navigating their dialysis options. Because in all my years on dialysis and as an active advocate for patients in the kidney community, there's always been a major gap in access to home dialysis education and too few voices calling for action. I've also seen that change over the past couple of years, thanks to really successful initiatives like Kidney Action Weeks from the AKF. I want to do something like that, but specifically about home dialysis. So that's why I asked AKF to be our partners in this event.
At AKF, we recognize the importance of educating everyone on all the modality choices available to them when they have to have renal replacement therapy. When Home Dialyzers United came to us with this event idea, we knew that we wanted to make it happen for the benefit of patients and all people dealing with kidney disease. This is also a matter of health equity, simply because kidney failure occurs disproportionately among people of color. Home dialysis access continues to lag behind where it should be, given the better outcomes and quality of life advantages, which you'll hear about today. Home Dialyzers United's expertise and focus on home dialysis specifically made them the perfect partner for this event, and we're delighted to be a part of it.
So as LaVarn mentioned, this is all about finding the best path forward that will help you live your best life, even if and when dialysis has to be part of it. Experience and data both show that home dialysis can provide better outcomes, more freedom, and many other documented benefits, which you will hear about in a way more detail today from dozens of experts. People like patients, care partners, nurses, nephrologists, device leaders, and advocates who will be leading our breakout sessions, speaking on panels, and available even to chat with you one-on-one here on the platform.
In addition to some of the top professionals in the renal community, people who are committed to making life better for all of those living with kidney disease, we'll also hear from patients themselves, known as dialyzers, who will talk to us about how knowing the options and choosing the right one at the right time literally changed their lives. At the American Kidney Fund, we know that home dialysis is one of the many options for renal replacement therapy, and it is an important one. Sadly, it is often underutilized in underserved communities, including among people of color.
So part of our purpose here today is to create a forum that is accessible to anyone and everyone with an internet-connected device who wants to participate. So with that in mind, it's not too late to register. If you know someone who could benefit from learning about their home dialysis options, send them to the link below on your screen and tell them to sign up. There's so much to come in the day ahead, and we're thrilled that you're here to be part of it.
Thanks to all of our expert speakers, patients, and everyone in attendance. We're delighted to have you. To the people behind the scenes and to the companies and organizations that sponsor today's event, we say thank you. Together, we can keep the fight going for people with kidney disease, accelerating the progress that leads to better solutions to improve people's lives.
So with that, let me introduce you to our first speaker today from one of our main event sponsors. Leslie Trigg is the CEO of Outset Medical, the company behind the Tablo hemodialysis system, which is being used in hospitals, clinics, and at home today. Welcome, Leslie.
Neelcha, thank you so much for that very, very kind introduction. And thank you to you, Lavarn, as well, for including us in this phenomenal program. I am so excited to be here. It's a first of its kind. I am overwhelmed by the news of how many people are joining us today. It is just so exciting to have this large community of us who have shared values and shared goals and a shared passion to innovate across kidney care. So I just could not be more thrilled and privileged to be able to kick off this conference. I still have so much to learn from all of you. And so I will hope to at least give you a little bit of food for thought and hopefully some inspiration and motivation to use the voice that you have. And I want to convince you of the impact that all of you can have in doing so, maybe by using Outset just as an example of the type of influence, impact, and voice that patient, consumers, families have had in one area of impact, which is device design and testing. So I'll use that as a case study, hopefully in the spirit of motivating you to use your voice in very broad and wide ways. I will talk a little bit about maybe first, who we are and what's our role in the community. For those of you that are not familiar with our mission, we were founded as a company in late 2010. I got involved in 2012, so I've been a part of the community here for 10 years, which is amazing. The device that we make, we designed and manufacture, is called Tablo. It is FDA cleared for use in hospitals, clinics, and most importantly, the home. We got FDA clearance for Tablo for home use just at the beginning of the pandemic, very end of March of 2020. We have a couple of thousand Tablo consoles in use at hospitals and clinics across the country, several hundred patients using Tablo in the home now. And we were very proud for the device to be designated by CMS, Centers for Medicare Services, that Tablo was deemed a substantial clinical improvement over the incumbent devices that have been cleared in the past for home. So we're super proud of that. But I'm sort of giving you the end of the story, and what's, I think, more relevant and more interesting in many ways is the beginning. When we started at 2012, we were outsiders. None of us here at Outset had any experience in the dialysis industry. Like many of you, we were coming into dialysis for the first time and managing and thinking about a lot of things all at the same time. I think it was a very different era, as I recall it, where I think patients, first of all, were termed patients, not consumers, 10 years ago, in my view. And I think that patients were sort of regarded as outsiders, that they were somehow outside of the process. I think they were regarded as outsiders, not just in the renal space, by the way, but in the healthcare system. And from CMS to FDA to device manufacturers to even healthcare providers. And the great news is that here we are 10 years later. I think that has really changed. And I'll get to that a little bit later. So I don't want to just start on a depressing note, but actually a hopeful note, because this is sort of the environment as we found it. Now, I believe that our position as outsiders, to get specific back to our story, our position as outsiders to the dialysis industry ultimately was really helpful. We entered with a beginner's mindset. We did not know why and why not. We asked a lot of really dumb questions. We listened way more than we talked. We didn't talk much because we didn't know what to say. But we were really advantaged by just simply listening. And the people that we listened to first were consumers, the family members, those that are managing chronic and end-stage renal disease themselves. Because we had a lot to learn. I think we were also advantaged by being able to see the space for what it was, again, 10 years ago, which was a space that hadn't changed much, if at all. I described it, and I'm a medical device person by training, mostly in other areas of clinical medicine like cardiology. And so when I looked at this space, I thought, well, where's the innovation in care delivery models? Where's the innovation in devices? Where's the innovation in drugs? And there just seemed to be so much opportunity and so much need. And our advantage, I think, as outsiders was that we weren't afraid to try to think about things differently. We really had very little to lose. There were a couple of patient consumers back in 2012, 2013, some of the first people that I ever talked to listening to their experiences, there were two things that really stood out to me because I heard it over and over again, versions of themes. One theme was, I'll never forget, it was at Sunnyvale. We had a little like 3,000 square foot office, just nothing, in the shadow of Google, actually. I remember driving in there every day, just kind of looking up at the Google building, and we were this little team of like, at that time, like 5 people. But I remember there was one woman who came in, and she had made the remark, she actually had a really good in-center experience, and had nothing but positive things to say about the nurses and the PCTs and the providers that had cared for her. She said, but nobody cares more about me than me. I was like, nobody cares more about me than me. Yes, that is absolutely true. And it was one of those simple but obvious, profound statements. Nobody will ever care more about me than me. That was one thing that I still remember 10 years later. The second theme that we heard a lot of people talking about early on was that the clinic setting, in their view and for them, really robbed them of control. It robbed them of control, robbed them of autonomy. And we heard and perceived, just sitting and listening and watching, maybe a loss of self-worth, maybe a loss of identity, which is all wrapped up for lots of us, I know for me, in control and in autonomy. And so those were some of the very, very earliest comments that really stuck with us, our team, and led ultimately to the development of what we believe in, what we decided we were going to be about. It was about developing an easier, simpler technology that would enable more and more people to be successful at home. That was the what. But what was more important was the why. And so this ended up becoming our why. And it was informed by this very early patient feedback about what was really important to those patients, which became for us to use technology to catalyze permanent and profound change. We want it to be durable, and we want it to be meaningful and deep in where, when, and how dialysis is delivered, ultimately for the purpose of restoring identity and agency and self-worth to consumers, patients, and their families worldwide. So that's our why. And that's really been with us from the very beginning over the last 10 years. So I want to fast forward and maybe talk about some avenues that I've seen for engagement and impact. And it's not just on device design. I'm going to give you some examples, hopefully some of them funny and fun, about product design, but also in the testing of new devices, new drugs, which is just as vital as the formation of those things, that it's the testing and the validation that ultimately makes them a reality ultimately in the marketplace through human factor studies and clinical trials. And then increasingly, and this is something I've really seen change in an awesome way over the last 10 years, policy and advocacy. Our Congress people want to hear from you. CMS wants to hear from you. The FDA wants to hear from you. There has just been a really exciting proliferation of opportunities for the consumers and family members to really make their voice heard in ways that I can tell you have had and will continue to have a direct impact on the future state that we want to create. But I'll start maybe with a little bit of product design, which is close to home for Outset. And again, in the hopes of convincing you that your voice is powerful when you use it, and please use it. So going back to the very beginning, this is where we started on the left. I can't, obviously I can't see everybody listening or on camera right now, but I bet if I said, hey, raise your hand if you'd like to use the device on the left, I'm going to guess that there are no hands up right now. I wouldn't want to use it either. This is something that had been originally designed, doesn't hold a lot of consumer appeal. I remember telling the engineers initially, like, this has a face even a mother can't love. And I am a mother. So it was tough. It was really tough. That is ultimately the end state there on the right. And so you can see that there was a lot of dramatic intervention performed, although this early prototype did have a second home and a second life productively as a TV tray for our engineers in one of our conference rooms. Now, how do we get from the left-hand side to the right-hand side? It was truly the feedback. none of us in the room, to be very honest, were managing chronic kidney disease. We were not managing end-stage renal disease. And that's really a dangerous thing when you start to assume that you know more than those that you are serving with your drug or your device or your care delivery model. And so we really tried hard to be cognizant of that and to be honest about that and to involve people very early and from all parts of the country, all demographics, educational levels, race, religion, creed, and to get as much diversity as we could as early and continuously as we could through the process. Now, in the beginning, I will tell you, I was really scared to do that because this is what we had to show for it on the left. So there was a patient, I will say patient 0, who I felt was a safe place to start that wouldn't be overly critical and would just kind of give us a little bit of a running start before we got to real people who might give us a little bit of a harsher review. So this was patient 0, my son Chase. He's now 16 years old, believe it or not, and in a really scary way driving. But he was, I swear to you, the first person to ever put hands on Tableau with no training, and that was the assignment. We always said, hey, this should be easy enough for a 5th grader to set up with no training. Of course, now today we train people and there's, a curriculum around that, but that was our bar, like no training. You should be able to walk up and get yourself through the steps on the touchscreen. So we downgraded to a 4th grader, which is what Chase was at this time. So we gained a little bit of confidence through Chase. He was able to set it up. I mean, it took a long time and there were some tears. No, I'm kidding. But he did get through it. And then we moved on and up to real people, real users who had had real experiences either in the clinic with no home or on other types of home devices. And so this is a video I just looked up, found on my phone, preparing for this talk. This was our first caregiver feedback. And you can see what happens here.
Mm-hmm. That's a problem.
Okay, that's a struggle. That's not good. And you could hear me. I was the person videoing like, yep, like that top lid is an issue. It's a center of gravity issue. She was struggling with that, trying to spike a saline bag. I don't know if you could quite hear her. It's hard to hear the audio, but she said, this is a problem. And it was like really direct feedback, exactly like that. People who are not trying to be nice, they're trying to actually make something better for their community. That really was the backbone of Tableau's design from day one. And she was 100% right. And there were about 100 other comments just like that from a whole variety of people. So we were very fortunate in that regard. It was through user feedback, both healthcare professionals, because Tableau was going to be used in the hospital as well, and patients, that also was really instrumental in the design of the touchscreen. And when you're designing a touchscreen, like this is where it starts. And I also just pulled this off my phone from years and years ago. In this field, if you can imagine, like a humongous wall of a conference room, every single screen that we thought maybe should be in Tableau. And we had input from consumers and families and healthcare professionals on every single screen, from button size to font size to what type of font. When you're treating, what type of treatment screen do you want? And got feedback on an early treatment screen on the left. I loved it. I thought it was cute. Well, it turned out I was the only one, N of one, which was me, and I'm not the consumer. So we went away from that and went to something that was on the right. That was easier, seemed easier for people to follow and understand and learn quickly and master. So those are just a few examples of the product design process. And I will tell you, there's a lot of fun along the way as well. And for any of you who are interested, please get in touch with HDU, with Neelja. We lean on organizations like HDU all the time when we want to test a new screen of the touch screen or a new feature, a new piece of hardware in the machine. We do a lot of leaning on organizations like HDU. So it's a direct way, like send an email. This is ultimately where Tableau ended up with a much stronger lid, really improved the hinge strength of that with a patient recently in her home in Texas. I'll touch a little bit on policy and advocacy. Somebody from my team, Tanya Saffer, is going to be leading a different panel today on this topic, so I won't dwell on it. But my main message here is these are, on the left, ways that I know patient consumers and their family members have directly had impact. New economic policies at CMS in the form of TIPNIs and other economic support mechanisms for home through the proposed rule. There are coalitions that you can join, like Innovate Kidney Care, lots and lots of opportunity for Hill visits, especially in this more virtual world, has made it really much easier for the community to kind of get its voice out without necessarily having to be in person. So I think in that regard, Zoom and Teams has really given all of us a lot more access to these channels of influence. So cannot encourage you enough to recognize that you have a voice, that it is a much vastly more inclusive environment than it ever has been over the last 10 years, but it only matters if you use it. So lastly, I will leave you with that message that your voice is powerful. It's really powerful. People want to hear from those who are managing CKD, managing ESRD. There's many of us that want to see a future state that is truly consumer-centric, family-centric. There are a number of really interesting kind of alternative models of care just to open up the channels to and around home dialysis. And I'll leave you with one parting thought, because I just actually noticed this on my desk right before I started speaking. Somebody on my team gave me this. I don't know if you guys can read it. It's possibly backwards. I can't tell. But the quotation is, "Fortune favors the bold." And she gave this to me, and I keep it on my desk. I think it's really powerful. So know that you're bold, and together as a community, we are immensely bold if we use the voice that we've been given. So thank you again for this opportunity to kick off today. And I am equally delighted to introduce and pass the torch to Dori Schatell. One final historical look back. When I was first getting into the space in 2012 and I didn't know anybody, we were the outsiders. I asked a number of people, like, who's the one person I most need to talk to in the dialysis and the renal space? 3 people told me 3 times in a row, Dori Schatell from MEI. I'm like, okay, I've got to get to Dori. And Dori has been a wonderful educator and coach and mentor for so many people in the community, and as for me and for Outset as well. So I know she's going to be talking about kind of what matters most to her and her experience. And so I know everybody's going to get a tremendous amount of value out of that. So Dori, thank you first and foremost. And second, I will hand it over to you. Thanks again to everybody, and enjoy the day. I know I will be.
Leslie, thank you so much for that introduction. It's great to see you again. And I am thrilled that there are so many people here today to listen to all of the wonderful things that you're going to hear today. I love these sessions. I've done them before and they're terrific. And you're really going to enjoy it and learn a lot and have a good time. So I am here to cover something that is unfortunately not really discussed enough in medicine. Because healthcare is not just about your health, it's about your life. And so what's really important is what matters to you. And that's the real question we're going to focus on. And I am focusing on that question as someone who has spent the last 32 years talking to more than 20,000 people with some degree of chronic kidney disease, people whose kidneys have not failed yet, people who are on every type of dialysis, and there are more types than you might realize, people with transplants, family members, clinicians, and we educate all of those folks. At the nonprofit Medical Education Institute, we develop evidence-based education, and these are some of the projects that we have worked on, some of which I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. What I really want to cover is the emotional reactions to kidney failure and how those affect you and how you can cope with those, types of dialysis and your lifestyle, and then how to match your treatment choice to your life, to what matters to you. So let's jump right in with emotional reactions. This is critically important because kidney failure and really any serious diagnosis of anything, not just kidney failure, it's like your own personal tidal wave. It's something that just crashes over you and washes away the things that you are used to in your life. It may alter things like when you get up in the morning, where you go once you do get up, how well you slept that last night. The emotional blow that happens when a scary diagnosis, is in your life, is something that is not, it's just not focused on, and it should be, because these emotions are 100% normal. It is totally normal for people to be angry. They may be angry at themselves. They may be angry at their doctors for missing a diagnosis. They may be angry with God, and that's very difficult for people of faith. Depression is very common. At any given moment, about 1 in 5 people who is on dialysis, at least, has clinical depression, and that needs to be treated. It doesn't go away on its own. The predominant emotion, and you are absolutely welcome, and it's totally normal to have more than one at the same time, but the predominant emotion is fear. A scary diagnosis is terrifying, and there's a challenge with fear, because when we're afraid, we can't learn. It isn't possible to learn. When stress hormones are circulating in your blood, cortisol, adrenaline, it's not possible to lay down new memories. So you can fight, you can flee, you can freeze, but you can't learn. And that's a problem, because you really need to learn. This is a point where there's a lot of things that you need to learn, all of which are new to you and confusing, but there's something that comes before learning, and that's hope. And I love this quote, because I could tell you about each of these studies, but we don't have time. So what's important to know is that hope is as important as oxygen. Hope is the only thing that really gets people past fear. And there is a lot of cause for hope when your kidneys fail, versus a lot of other illnesses where there maybe is less. So what does hope look like? From the folks that I talk to, hope really looks like having the things that make your life worthwhile, having the life you had before, or keeping the dreams that you had before, even if you haven't had a chance to do them yet. So, let's say you've always wanted to go see the Eiffel Tower, or, you want to run a marathon or whatever. That's what hope looks like. So that means it looks a little different for everybody, and that we each need to think about what is important to us, what does bring us joy, what makes us want to get up in the morning, because we can keep those things, but we have to work at it. We have to make some choices that let us keep those things. It is easy to lose them, but it's not essential. So there are 4 coping strategies that can make a huge difference. And one of them is attitude. And you just saw me focusing on the positive. That's a discipline. It's something that you can learn how to do. And we're going to do just a little bit of it today. Aid means you find support. Find the people around you who will help you to be hopeful, who will, keep you going when you're having a dark day. Getting answers is important. You are the only point of continuity in your own care. You need to become your own expert. So looking for answers and finding them is a key part of having any chronic disease. And then action, taking charge, leading your team, keeping them focused on what matters to you, not just on what your blood results are. Those are important, but they're only important insofar as they keep you healthy enough to keep doing the things you love, because that's what really is important. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist who was in what do they call those? Camp in the Holocaust. That word will come back to me at some point soon, I'm sure. At any rate, he said the last of the human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. And what that means is, he's sitting in prison, basically, on somebody else's schedule, eating very little and bolstering up the people around him with hope. And even in those circumstances, no matter what happens to you, you always have the freedom for how to react to it. So here is an example of reframing, which is kind of what he did. And you're probably familiar with this one. I think most people are. Life gives you lemons. What do? You make lemonade, right? That's an example of reframing. Here's another one. Let's say we have this mutinous looking little girl in our lives. Is she stubborn or is she persistent? You know, one of those traits is kind of pejorative. Is stubbornness good? I mean, as the mom of two very stubborn daughters, I would say persistence is an excellent life trait. Stubbornness is a little challenging to live with. The thing is, they're the same. They're the same thing. So you decide what your frame is that you look at things through. Here's this one is kind of cute. What you probably think is happening is, wow, this guy is showing off because look, he lost a ton of weight. Look how giant those pants are. And the tagline is, no, he didn't lose weight. He just bought bigger pants. Point being, there is virtually always more than one way to look at any situation or anything. So you might see a bunny here. You might see a duck. It really just depends on which way you look at it. And actually, this is a bunny duck if it's both at the same time. You may see things that aren't there. And this is a challenge with fear, because with fear, you may make things real that aren't real. Do you see dark spots where those white lines come together? They don't exist. They're not really there. So you see them, but they're not there. And that can happen in our lives too. And new information, trying to integrate it into your life, trying to make it fit and see where it goes, can be very confusing. This is an Escher drawing. If you're familiar with Escher, I'm sure you've seen this before, but it is challenging to learn a large body of complicated new information. I have faith in you. You can do it. We will help you get there. You'll learn a lot today. And finally, another way of coping is to consider that however bad things look for you, they may well look much worse for someone else. This is Nick Vujicic, and he was born this way. So he didn't have a terrible accident or anything. And his life, as you can imagine, got very difficult at times. And he's now a motivational speaker, and he is having a fantastic life. Look at his beautiful family. So life can be good no matter what gets thrown at you. And pretty much no matter how old you are, but the older we get, the more likely this is, you've coped with other challenging things before in your life. A divorce, death of a loved one, loss of a job, loss of a home. You know, there are any number of difficulties. You know, I think the phrase is, in every life, a little rain must fall. Everybody's had hard things to cope with. You have some coping skills from those. You can use those to deal with kidney disease too. And this is important. The first dialysis in this country was done 1 month after I was born. So I was born in February of 1960. In March of 1960, chronic dialysis started in Seattle, and there were not enough machines and equipment to go around. This is a life and death committee. They had to make decisions about who was going to get life-saving treatment and live, and who wasn't going to get it. So just 60 years ago, nobody lived through kidney failure. Today, many, many people do. And this is Nancy, my dear friend Nancy. And sorry, I'm getting sad. We lost Nancy earlier this year, but at 73 years old. And she got married, she had children. Anyway, that's Nancy. So you can feel better. You can. And this kidney disease is, maybe it's the worst thing that's ever happened to you, maybe it isn't, but people can and do live well with kidney disease. So let's talk about dialysis. And yes, I absolutely realize there's transplant too. I think that's a different talk. A lot of folks who start out in center, and almost everybody does, doing standard in-center hemo, sometimes, and I hear this a lot, I just talked to someone yesterday who had this happen. You know, the fatigue after dialysis is overwhelming. I can't do anything for hours. The fellow I talked to yesterday slept for 24 hours after each treatment. bottoming out. That means having your blood pressure drop is awful. I have had that happen. I'm not on dialysis, but I have had my blood pressure drop, and it is one of the worst feelings ever. It is absolutely terrible. Feeling guilty about being a burden. The better you feel and the more you can do, the less you feel like a burden. And how well you feel and how much you can do depends almost entirely on which treatment you choose. So the idea of dialysis is to restore balance. Kidneys are the balancers of the body. So this is our little tilty thing. I'm losing lots of words today. There are 7 ways to do dialysis, not just 2, not just standard in-center hemo and PD. There are 2 ways to do PD. You can do PD with a cycler, which is what most people do. You can do PD with manual exchanges, which is helpful if a cycler causes drain pain, maybe a possibility. In-center hemo can be done in 2 different ways, generally both using this big machine. So it can be done as standard, that's what most people do, 3 times a week, an average in the US of 3.6 hours per treatment, which is not very much at all. Or in-center dialysis can be done as nocturnal. That's much rarer, but the treatments are twice as long and twice as gentle. And people feel much, much better, and they live longer too. And then home hemodialysis can be done in 3 different ways. People can do it every other day or 3 times a week. Most people in the US do short daily, and they use this machine, a next stage, or there are now other machines also. And actually, I have to update this slide. I need to include the new machines. Sorry. At any rate, this machine or also nocturnal hemodialysis can be done at home. And that is Cadillac dialysis. And I'll show you why. This is why. So let's look at kidney function. There's the most kidney function. That would be if you're healthy, both of your kidneys work. And then there's the least, which is standard in-center hemo. The thing to remember about standard in-center hemo is that on days you don't get treatment, you have 0 kidney function. That's why you're so limited with what you can eat and drink, because there's no kidney function. There's no carryover. That treatment doesn't get you function the next day, only the day you get it. Peritoneal dialysis is a little bit more function. It's more gentle because it's spread out over 7 days. But 7 days of PD is about equal to 3 days of standard in-center hemo. Daily hemo is a bit more. In-center nocturnal is more than that. Nocturnal home hemo is the most dialysis it's possible to get. And then transplant is the most kidney replacement it's possible to get. So that's kind of how these array out. And there are things most likely in your lives that matter to you. And these are just a few. You may have a totally different list, but these are pretty common. You might like to travel. You might like to be active. You might like to have, an intimate life with your partner. You might want to sleep better, to eat better, to have work or hobbies. Each treatment affects all of these things in a different way. So if you are doing a treatment now and you do not like how your life works, there are other options. And that's really what we want you to know. It is possible to switch if the treatment that you're doing isn't a good fit. And you've seen there are lots of things that you could switch to. So there are things that you might want in your life, and everybody has a different set of these things, but family, travel, pets, a job that has meaning for you, all of these things may be among your list or not, and that's fine. The thing is, and this is our last section, the way to live your best life with kidney failure is to match your treatment option to the life you want to have. That's the key. And that's the part that often we don't really think about. It's like, well, you can clean your blood this way, you clean your blood that way. That's true. But life isn't about cleaning your blood. Life is about picking your kid up from the bus stop. Life is about, reading a bedtime story or taking your dog out for a walk or taking that dream trip that you wanted. That's what life's about. So we built a tool that can help you to match your treatment choice with what you want your life to look like, no matter what that is. And this tool covers dialysis and transplant and medical management without dialysis, which we call comfort care. So this is a way, and it's at www.mykidneylifeplan.org. And this is a way for you to look at this choice from your frame, and nobody else has your frame except you. So this is going to show you, it's going to ask you a question, what brings you here, but really we focus on what matters to you. There's a little 1-minute video that shows how it works. And there are, I think, 23 or 24 different values, lifestyle values, relationship values, health values. Pick 3 values. You can always go back and pick more at the end, but pick 3 values. And then for each of those values, you're going to see a page like this with boxes. You can open or close all of the dialysis, transplant, or comfort care, depending on what you're thinking about right now. You can go back through it and think about it differently and look at different options. But anyway, for each value that you pick, you're going to see boxes that are going to give you the pros and cons of that option for that value specifically. And you rate those with stars. So 0 stars, if this doesn't look like something you want at all, to 5 stars, like, I could see my life working if I pick that. So you rate the boxes with the stars. And then when you get to the end, you're going to see a chart like this that's going to have your values and how you rated them. And that means that you can kind of start that conversation with a clinician in a completely different place. They don't have to start educating you right at the start about how this option works, how that option works. That's a lot of detail. It's hard to take in. What's most important up front is what you want your life to look like, what matters to you, and what looks like it's going to work the best to get you there. Then you can learn the details. First, figure out what your motivation is, because that's what drives everything. That not only can help you to pick the right treatment for you, it can also help you to stay on that treatment when you hit those speed bumps that you're going to hit along the way. Because there are going to be times when things don't go as smoothly as you wish they would. And there are going to be times, especially at the beginning, when this is hard. And maybe it's harder than you thought it would be. Keep your goal in mind. Keep your dreams in mind. Keep your hopes in mind. That's what will keep you going. So we have other resources for you. Home Dialysis Central, which is homedialysis.org. Tons and tons and tons of information. You can learn about every treatment. You can take online classes. You can be in our forums. You can join our Facebook group. You can get to this treatment matcher, all of the things. Lots and lots and lots of resources. This is the Facebook group. We have, I think at this point, pretty close to 7,000 members. And somebody is awake 24/7. And besides the your fellow people on dialysis, people with transplants, people, family members, care partners, we also have a number of clinicians who take part in the group. And I'm just hiring a new nurse, and she's going to also monitor the group. And she's an expert in both PD and home hemo, so that will be terrific. So takeaways. Coping. The way to cope. Positive attitude. Find your support, your aid. Get answers to your questions and take action. This is your life. This is your body. This is your kidney plant. Your treatment option needs to fit your life, not just your blood, not just your toxins and your water that you need to remove. It needs to fit your life, and we can help you match it to your life. That treatment matcher is free. There is no charge to use that. We built it to help you. And in general, the more treatment you get and the more gentle it is, the better you can feel and the longer you live too. So thank you so much. I am delighted to be here, and I know that you're going to learn so much the rest of the day. I hope you come away with this with some tools and some ways to make your life much better. Thank you.
Dori, thank you so much for that informative, inspiring presentation. Your talk really puts us in the right state of mind to kick off today's events, where we can think about what matters to me as we make decisions, as we make selections of which sessions to attend, which questions to ask, and who to reach out to through the chat function of this platform. Hello, everyone. I'm John Bayton, Director of Strategic Planning for Home Dialysis United, and I will be your MC for today. I am so honored and delighted to be here with you. I know what you are going through, and you are not alone. I am a 2-time transplant recipient, 3 years and 6 months of successful transplant. I also have experience in every modality of dialysis, including in-center hemodialysis, peritoneal dialysis, and home hemodialysis. My personal experience with kidney disease is why I became an advocate for people dealing with this illness, as we all deserve access to all of the care options available to us, many of which you will learn about in today's program. Throughout the day, if you have any questions about where to go or how to use this platform, just click the reception tab on the left side menu, where you can find a schedule of today's events and an explanation of how to navigate around this platform, as well as the features available to you as an attendee. In a few minutes, we will start our first breakout sessions of the day, which will run from 12 p.m. Eastern until 1 p.m. Eastern. During this time, you may choose to attend one of the 3 simultaneous breakout sessions. Each session features expert panelists and patients discussing 3 important but distinct topics. Session 1 is Understanding Your Options, ideal for people who aren't yet sure which form of home dialysis might be right for them and who want to get a sense of all the options available to them. Session 2 is Making Home Dialysis Work for You, which is best attended if you know that home hemodialysis is the modality you're interested in, or if you're currently doing home hemodialysis and you want to learn some tips and tricks to being successful. Session 3 is Why Peritoneal Dialysis May Be For You, which explores the benefits of home peritoneal dialysis and how to know if you are a good candidate for PD. If you're in one session and you realize that you'd rather get the information in another session, just hop out and hop in the other session that's happening live at the same time, or watch the other session later in the replay tab. After these breakout sessions, we return to the main stage for our midday program, which begins with 20 minutes of flexible networking time, where you can use the chat tools of Hopin to chat one-to-one with other participants, including patients and experts who you may have heard from during the breakouts. We'll also be playing a series of patient videos on the main stage, so you can watch and see more about home dialysis options. At 1:20 p.m. Eastern, we'll move to our first patient panel discussion of the day, where our host, Nilce Jenny, will moderate a dialogue about what I wish I knew then about home dialysis, with several experienced patients sharing their perspectives and advice. Then you'll hear a brief conversation between myself and Dr. Rachel Perlman, a nephrologist with the University of Michigan, about health equity issues in home dialysis access. At 2 p.m. Eastern, we kick off our second and final breakout sessions of the day, session 4 through 6, where you can again choose to attend any one of these 3 different simultaneous live discussions. Session 4 is advocating for the care you or your loved one deserves, ideal for people who are struggling with getting access to home dialysis options or receiving education from their centers about home dialysis options, as you'll learn some effective ways to self-advocate. Session 5 is called The Right Choice for the Patient at the Right Time, which is all about understanding that home hemodialysis and frequency of dialyzing is a spectrum that requires an individualized approach suited to the patient's needs. Session 6 is Preventing Infection on PD and Planning for the Future, which will discuss the possibilities of PD treatment, how to know if PD is no longer working for you, and how to ensure you're getting what you need from the treatment. After we wrap up our afternoon breakout sessions, we'll be back at the main stage for some key sections of the day's program. First, at 3 p.m. Eastern, I'll take you through a device showcase, sharing videos about several home dialysis devices currently on the market and available to patients, as well as a couple that are in development. At 3:45, we'll start the Device Manufacturers Roundtable, where you'll hear from representatives from several of the device companies that have sponsored today's event and get to ask them questions about their devices. Then at 4:15, we will have our second and final patient panel discussion of the day, moderated by platinum selling recording artist, patient advocate, and motivational speaker, David Rush. This dialogue will include several patients with a range of experiences on dialysis, including in-center dialysis, to speak about the main differences between these options and how to find independence in whatever it is you decide to do. Our day will end with some very moving, meaningful closing remarks from Brigitte Schiller, Chief Medical Officer of Satellite Healthcare, one of today's event sponsors. Thank you again for joining us for today's first of its kind Dialysis at Home event. We're so happy you're here. Please go ahead now and click the Sessions tab on the left side menu to head over to the breakout sessions and select which one you'd like to attend.